This video, you'll learn about physiological control mechanisms, including negative and positive feedback with specific examples of each. A negative feedback loop is a physiological control mechanism that works to maintain homeostasis, a state of balance in which the body's internal environment remains relatively stable despite changes in the internal and external environment. Homeostasis involves controlling a variable or factor that's being regulated. A sensor or receptor monitors this variable, and a stimulus is a change from this homeostatic set point, a change in the level of a variable. The sensor relays an input information about the variable to a control center, which is usually in the central nervous system, for example, in the brain or spinal cord. This control center processes the sensory input information and sends an output commands that tell the effector how to respond. The effector is a cell or organ in the body that can produce a response that influences the variable, that changes the variable in a negative feedback loop. This response will counteract the stimulus in order to restore the homeostatic set point. Let's look at a specific example. Regulating body temperature, the homeostatic set point is 37 degrees Celsius, which equals 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. A stimulus of body temperature above 37 degrees Celsius is detected by thermoreceptors, nerve cells in the skin, or thermoreceptors in the brain. The receptors or sensors send the input information that the body temperature is too high to the temperature regulatory center in the brain, a thermoregulatory control center, which is found in a region of the brain called the hypothalamus. The control center then sends the output command. In this case, the commands travel out through nerves that go to sweat glands in the skin throughout the body. Sweat glands are stimulated to produce a watery secretion that evaporates, helping to remove heat from the body, lowering body temperature back towards the homeostatic set. Another example of a negative feedback loop is maintaining pH homeostasis or acid-base balance. If the hydrogen ion concentration of the blood is too high, that means pH is too low, what we call acidosis. Receptors in the brain and arteries detect acidosis. Then a control center in the brain receives the input and sends output commands to the muscles for breathing in order to increase the respiration rate as we breathe deeper or faster. Carbon dioxide is removed from the blood at a higher rate. As the blood carbon dioxide level goes down, the carbonic acid level of our blood goes down. This is effectively removing hydrogen ions from the blood, so that the pH of the blood increases, helping to restore the homeostatic set point of our blood pH, which is about 7.4. In contrast, if the blood pH is too high, if it's above 7.4, we have alkalosis. In this situation, the control center will send commands to decrease the respiration rate so that more carbon dioxide will accumulate in the blood, more carbonic acid will accumulate in the blood, increasing the blood hydrogen ion concentration, or that is to say, the pH of the blood will decrease, bring blood pH back down towards the homeostatic set point of 7.4. Positive feedback mechanism, the effector produces a response that enhances the stimulus. The stimulus gets stronger, and the effector produces a stronger response, which builds and builds until a big change occurs, ending the positive feedback loop. Let's look at the specific example of the positive feedback mechanism controlling childbearing. There are stretch receptors in a region of the uterus called the cervix. As the head of the baby pushes against the cervix, this stretching is detected and relayed as an input to the control center in the brain. This control center in the brain sends commands out in the form of a hormone called oxytocin. The output is oxytocin that travels in the blood from the pituitary gland back to the uterus, where oxytocin stimulates contraction of smooth muscle in the wall of the uterus, the myometrium. As the smooth muscle contracts, the uterus forces the head of the baby further into the cervix, which enhances the stimulus, creates more stretching. As there's more stretching, the input gets stronger, and then the brain sends the commands, the output, through the pituitary gland. More oxytocin is released, and then the uterus contracts even more. You can see this loop will build and get stronger and stronger until the baby is born. Another example of a positive feedback loop is blood clot formation. When platelets are activated by a damaged blood vessel, they release clotting factors that can stimulate nearby platelets. And as platelets become activated, they also become activated to release more clotting factors. As they clump up, they continue releasing clotting factors, activating more nearby platelets to clump up and release more clotting factors. This loop builds and builds and builds until the ruptured blood vessel is sealed off